Good morning. It's good to see you. Happy Memorial Day. Great to see you. Hey, if you follow along with Ben's notes, as you should, or if you have gotten the scuttlebutt on social media or wherever, you know that some of you might know I had a kind of interesting last couple of weeks. Started on Mother's Day, which I prefer to be about me. So I found a rather unique way to make that happen. I started feeling kind of bad Saturday night, felt really bad Sunday morning, just kind of laid in bed all day. Typical Mother's Day for me. Just kidding. But just kind of, eventually at night, my wife kind of figured out, wait a second, it hurts right there by your appendix, dummy. So we eventually went to the hospital and then burst appendix. So had the surgery Monday and in the hospital 4 days, and it's been, not going to lie, quite an ordeal. And had a little time where had a little bit of a collapsed lung, which made the breathing hard and all of that stuff that went with it. And it's been a journey back. I'm probably not 100%. I can take most of you today, but it's going to take me a couple more weeks for the rest of it. And but we've been really grateful for the progress and all of that. There are strict orders from the doctor, however, pretty clear. Absolutely no vacuuming or housework for a while for me. So pray for everyone else to adapt to that. Another funny thing, disappointment was I said to the doctor, while you're going to be in there, why not? Would you just go ahead and put in a six-pack abs for me? And I don't know, apparently he didn't hear me. I don't know what. I woke up, I had the 2-liter bottles instead. So that's a ripoff. I'll be asking for a refund on that. But no, we're really grateful. But actually, the reason one of the things that was very, very serious that came out of this was it reminded me of something. From the moment I got sick, there were just, and I know it's not always this way for everyone, but it's going to illustrate something. There were so many people that I felt like were there to help. And I know not everyone gets all that support all the time, but I got to tell you, it's a picture of something that I think we all need and are kind of made for. Like, for example, I kind of got to thinking about it like this. Like, here's me with my busted appendix, right? Here I am. But right away, we go into the ER late at night, and there's this lady there, and she says, "Can I help you?" I'm like, "Yes." Doubled over, yes, And then there was the lady who wheeled us back for a CT scan. And then there was another nurse who wheeled me over to some other place. And then eventually we got into a room and there was a nice nurse there. I think her name was Megan or something. And then there was another one named Lily and another one named Lily Beth and another great nurse named Valerie. And then there was Dr. Hennon who did the surgery and Dr. Wu and then all the other respiratory therapists and people that started helping. And then the friends and the family that started calling and connecting, and the Christian friends from Mountain that were just so good about just checking in and praying, and I just got to thinking about all the different people in my little tiny world that checked in on us, and how beautiful all of this ended up being. And there was the prayer support, my friends, my family, my Carla, my daughter, my buddies from around the country who are checking on me. And I just got to thinking, it created this beautiful web of support and friendship and I just felt surrounded. And it's like this picture right here of the individuals that came around me is a picture really what I think every single person is made for. We're made to exist in a web of friendship that helps you when you need it, and challenges you and helps you get better at life. It's how God intends us to live, connected with friends, in relationships. In my weekend state, when sometimes you're kind of more tender, I guess, when you realize you're fragile, and I start really reaching out for the Lord a little more. And can you relate to that? Anybody? And I'm an old timer, so I find myself like plunking out old hymns, like reaching for old songs. And one of the songs that has meant so much to me, as a lot of you won't even know it, it's called "Abide with Me." It's always been special to me, but we sang it around my dad's bedside a year ago when he was passing, so it means even more to me now, I suppose. But I find myself singing. I was playing it on YouTube one night, and it's got these great words about how God's going to abide with you through every problem, every pain, when help and other trials and things just fail. God's going to be there for you. And the reason I'm telling you all this is I was listening to it on YouTube, and under the comment section of this beautiful arrangement of Abide with Me, about God's presence and the fellowship of others around us, this person wrote these words, I'm not a believer in God or anything like that, but this song really moved me because I think it speaks to what we all long for so desperately, and that is that someone or some people will be with us in our worst times of need. And I thought, bam, right there. I don't know if that guy knew what I was preaching this week, but also he spoke, even though he's not even a believer, he said, exactly what is the truth. That all of us, none of us are made to be alone. We're made for a web like that. That's how we're created. And we're relational beings, whether you know it or not. We're made for relationships. So you can see this actually at the beginning of the Bible. If you open your Bible, the very first pages, the book of Genesis, what you find there is that even before stuff was created, you find God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit kind of pre-existing for all eternity in relationship. I don't know how all that works, but God's one, but three, but the three of them are in this like circle dance of relationship. And at creation, we're simply invited into it to connect with each other and with God in the same way that God has always connected with God's self, however that works. In a beautiful way, relational dimension is at the heart of reality and baked into the universe, especially in the way that we are made. That's why when you feel like upset in your life and you don't have what the Bible calls shalom, it's that you're upset with someone else this way or this way with God. And when we have peace, it's because we're connected with God and others in our relationships are well. That's how that works. Do you know after creation what the first problem is? It's not sin. The first God creates, He creates, the heavens, the firmaments, and the oceans, and the seas, and the animals, and everything He creates. He says, "That's good. Oh my, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's good." 6 days in a row, and then He creates the human, and He goes, "That's very good." But then He steps back and He says, "Oh wait, there's something here that's not good." And do you know what that is? Yeah, it wasn't sin. It was that there was only one of them. It was that the human was alone. He said, it's just not good for this one to be alone. As if to say, that's not the way I invented this creature. It's not good. They're created in my image. We're created to connect. And when we don't, it's not good. We're like Legos. You ever think of Legos? You've heard me tell about my friend Matt. He was a young preacher. He had to go visit this lady, and he had a 6-year-old boy with her, but he had to go visit her. And this lady, she was as obsessive, compulsive, neat freak as they come, right? Everything in its place. Her house was immaculate, And when they got there, she sees the 6-year-old boy. She starts to get nervous right away, but she's prepared. She doesn't have any kids of her own, but she has a little bin of Legos under the couch. So she gets out the Legos and gives it to the 6-year-old boy as they're going to sit and talk for a few minutes. Well, you tell me. You're a 6-year-old kid, and someone hands you a bucket of Legos. What's the first thing you're going to do? Of course he does. He dumps that thing out all over the floor, and there's Legos bouncing and flying under the couch and going all over everywhere. And they start talking. He's got his Legos, and he's building stuff. Well, she can't focus on the conversation at all because she's watching this mess of a pile of Legos over here and what's happening. And she finally stops and says, "Excuse me," and goes down to the little boy. She starts scooping up all the Legos, puts them back in the container, and then hands one to the little boy and says, "I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to ask you, could you just play with these one at a time?" It's like, wait, what? Lady, come on. That's not how Legos work, right? A solitary Lego can never fulfill its destiny. Am I right? It's not what Legos are. It's not how they're made. They're made for connection. And you and I are exactly the same way. The whole reason for our creation is not to live in isolation, but to connect with God and with one another. And yes, it's more messy, but it's what we're made for. We are made for relationships. And when sin actually does enter the picture of the human family, you know what it does? It creates disconnection. It drives people apart. It creates wedges and misunderstandings and distance and anger and frustration and I'm never doing that again attitude. You got the man and the woman at each other, blaming each other. You got the kids killing each other and running around. I mean, it's like it all goes south real quick, and it's all about disconnection. So think about this for a second. If the God who made us for connection, and yet there are all these prevailing forces we feel in our spirit and all around us that are driving us apart, and God is behind the force of connection, where do you suppose the force of disconnection comes from? You ever thought about that? Say you got an enemy here at work, and the enemy doesn't need to convince you not to believe in God or make you some big sinner to get his way with you. All he needs to do is isolate you and pull you away from the connections that you're designed to have. And he gets his way. Do you realize that on average Americans have fewer friends today than we've ever had? More people are lonely and disconnected than we've ever had, and yet we got more technology, and we pretend we're connecting, but it's just the shallow, surface level stuff. We've traded connections on Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat for depth relationships. And don't talk to me about how you can become good friends on TikTok. I know Pastor World, and those surveys are saying that 70% of pastors don't even have one close friend or confidant. I'm just guessing that's more than pastors. And it's not the way we want to be. It's not the way God intends us to be. And here's the kicker. You can't really follow Jesus like that. It doesn't work. That's why at Mountain we're trying to do something a little against the grain here. We're trying to create a community where we can dare to come together and do what we know we're made for, even though it's a little difficult and is messy. But we want to create a special, warm, welcoming, shining place of hospitality where everyone feels like I really do belong here, and I can connect with God and some deep friendships with others that I can't really find other places. You know, as Western civilization Americans, it's kind of hard, I think, sometimes to see ourselves accurately. But here's the thing. You know, there's a price to be paid for living in any culture, isn't there? And it's easy for us. We might look at a developing country and say, oh, it's a big price to pay there because you might bury your babies. And it's true. There are big prices to pay in some developing countries. Infant mortality, bad water, lack of education, some of these things that we consider really, really dangerous just living there. And we can be very grateful, maybe especially on Memorial Day weekend, that we live in this country, in this culture. But you know what? We're paying a price to live in this culture too. And that is that you live at arm's length with nearly everyone. And we still call it friendship. And we think it's normal. Because we've all gotten used to it like fish swimming in an aquarium for a long, long time. And it seems like it's just the way it's supposed to be. So yeah, in a developing country, you might get malaria. But in America, you just might have the risk that relationships are few and surface level. And we might live like lone Legos and think that that's the way the game is played. We're personable with so many, but truly personal with hardly any. And I think it's gutting more of us than we want to admit and neutering our ability to actually follow Jesus in the way that he meant to, because there's just all these fears to get past. Have you ever seen an invisible fence, which is kind of a dumb question. So let me rephrase that. You ever seen a dog that has an invisible fence, right? If you don't know it's there, it's kind of strange, right? You see this, maybe a friendly dog out in the yard, right? This friendly dog, by nature, wants to run towards some people walking by and say, hi, everybody. So he takes off happily toward the people, but all of a sudden he stops in the middle of the yard. And if you don't know what's going on, you're like, what's up with that? Why'd that dog stop running to the people? But the answer is, well, the dog knows there's an invisible fence right there, right? And then there's a zip. He's got zapped a couple times, and he's like, I'm not going past that. Even if it is connecting with people, I'm not doing it. And I think the thing is, we've all kind of learned to live behind some invisible fences, haven't we? We just do. We stop running toward people as well because we've learned some of the rules, we've experienced some of the pain, we've been zapped a time or two. And it's hard to push past that. And so we just kind of collectively agree to live. And you can almost see it figuratively, like we hide behind our screens, our phones, our computers, our TVs. We used to have front porches, Kids would play in the front yard and everyone would talk back and forth across the porches, You at least have some community that way. But, now we got our climate-controlled basement theater rooms, and if we venture out, it's to the private deck out back in the fenced-in yard. We come into our garage door goes up, we go in, the garage door comes down, and it just kind of helps perpetuate this individualistic, isolated way of living behind our fences that can make, if we're not careful, good, lasting, real, sustainable relationships really hard if you're not super intentional about it. And very few of us feel like we're very good at it. And that it doesn't come easily. And then, what's even worse? We take all that individualistic way of thinking and behaving and we drag it right into the church. And we think, well, that's the way the church is supposed to behave. So here we are in a public place, sitting side by side, but going home and crying private tears and bearing private burdens and trying to walk with Jesus all by ourselves. Because some of us have lived behind the electric fence so long, we think that's the way you do church too. We've become satisfied with it. We come to expect it. We think the goal of church is to get people into a program. You can do all the church stuff, y'all, and still stay behind your electric fence, your invisible fence. You got an invisible fence around you somehow that's preventing you from just like daring to do the very thing you were made to do, which is connect because you've been hurt or because it's scary or because you wouldn't know where you'd ever find the time or how you'd ever do it, or you tried it before, or this is all very real. We're talking about something that's very real here. So here's the thing. So Jesus comes along and he says, follow me. And then we begin to learn that immediately he doesn't just mean follow him, he means walk with me with some others who are walking with me, because it turns out that's the only way you can walk with Jesus is with some others that are walking with him. That's what we're talking about in this series, is how do you walk with Jesus? How do you follow Jesus? I mean, we're all following someone. The question is not, are you following anybody? Because are you being discipled by anyone? Yeah, you are. We all are. The question is who or what? And Jesus says, I want you to follow me. I'm going to show you a different way of living, a different way of being. And a lot of people have confused what we consider Christianity in this country for actually following Jesus. They're two very different things. What passes for cultural Christianity and what is actually following Jesus are really different. So we're just trying to keep it real around here and say, you know what, we're going to kind of mince words. We're going to talk about the stuff that Jesus actually said. And one of the things he said is, apprentice yourself to me, which means you got to learn to think like I think and live like I lived and do like I do. And that's what leads us to talk about this thing called the mountain walk. Okay, mountain walk. So everyone, can you say that? Say the mountain walk. Everyone say the mountain walk. What is the mountain walk? Well, it's all based on the teaching of Jesus, answering the question, well, what does he want from us? He wants us to follow him. What does that look like? Well, the answer is the mountain walk. We just pull it right out of the words of Jesus. One day they asked Jesus, what's the most important thing of all the stuff, like in all the Old Testament and all the Bible, what's like the biggest deal? Now, a lot of times when Jesus was asked a question like that, he almost he kind of gave some clever answer, or he told a story, or he dodged it, and they were scratching their heads like, what did he just say? But not this time. When they said, Jesus, what's the most important thing? He answered it straight up. And what he said was, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That's the most important thing. Love God. And then in the same breath, he said, and there's another one that's just as important. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love people. And then Luke says the very next thing he did is he told that story that some of us have heard about that guy who was going along the road and gets beat up, mugged, left for dead. And a bunch of so-called religious people passed by on the other side. But one guy, the Samaritan dude, he stopped and helped him, took care of him. And Jesus says, be like that guy. serve the world. That's his answer. What do I got to do? Love God, love people, serve the world. It's simple enough for a kid to get it, but it's deep enough that none of us will ever master it completely in our lifetime. And that's the beauty of the mountain walk. So let's kind of say them together here. Say them with me, Will. Love God, love people, and serve the world. According to Jesus, that's the big stuff. That's the important stuff. So that's why we call it the mountain walk. We actually have hand motions to help us remember it because it's important. You think about the directions. Like if a kid reaches up to daddy and daddy reaches down, there's a relationship there. That reminds us, first of all, of what one? Love God. Go ahead and humor me here. Would you put your hands up for a second? We'll anchor this in our brains this way. We'll learn it this way. So we're going to love God, and then you put your arm out around someone. Go ahead and grab someone if you want to. Yeah. But you're going to love people. You can't follow Jesus without this stuff. You can follow Jesus without the hand motions, but you can't follow Jesus without the stuff. And then your hands go out in front like this because we're going to serve the world. So say them with me now. Love God, love people, serve the world. That's what makes the world go round. That's what following Jesus is. One more time without my help. Ready? All right. Yeah, you're not great disciples yet, but you'll get there. So we've actually created a little tool to kind of help us. It's called the Mountain Walk Experience. Real quick, I'll put it on the screen. Get your phone out. It's okay. It's legal to do this. Get your phone out and text the word walk to 94062. Because every day over the next 2 weeks, we'll just send one another as a little daily devotional. It's a daily little podcast and a scripture and a little simple prayer about 5 minutes long. Good way to start your day. And as the day goes on, there's links to all this other stuff to help us just get better at figuring out what it looks like to follow Jesus. So text walk to 94062 and you'll get stuff for the next 2 weeks. There's also another website, or on our website, go to that next slide. Just go to mountaincc.org, Mountain Walk, and there's all kinds of stuff there. So today we want to talk about, last week we talked about love God. Luke was great to get us started that way. And today we're going to talk about love people because we're made for relationships. And there are two kind of elements or prongs to every one of these. Last week, under love God, we talked about worship together and abide alone, how both those are crucial. Today, under under love people, we want to talk about the two prongs. Here they are. Say them with me. Hold on and reach out. Hold on means you got to hold on to some other people who are also walking with Jesus. And reach out means you got to reach out for some who don't even know Jesus yet. And those are the two components of love people. Can I break it down for us today just a little bit? Can we talk about some of this? I'd love for you to think about your life and kind of do an audit of just how you're doing in this whole relational world. Because hold on reminds us that if you really do want to follow Jesus, it's not a solo sport. And it's not something you can actually do alone. We've told ourselves you can, but you really can't. We need Christian friends to hold on to. So we're talking about the process then, think about this, of choosing and then nurturing. That's what hold on means. Choose friends well and nurture those friendships wisely. Invest in those. When I talk to people who are grounded and get it and are still around following Jesus decades later, it's people that did that. They chose and nurtured Christian friendships so that when they lose their job, when the medical thing hits, when everything goes haywire in life, they have some way of grounding themselves and holding on and being held on to. We need friends because you can't follow Jesus all by yourself and make it through. Jesus did this. He modeled this. He found his posse. He had some ride or die guys. They weren't perfect, but he didn't go it alone. And if you want to follow Jesus and be like him, you got to do the same. You got to find your ride or die posse of people who are spiritual friends who can walk with you as you try to walk with Jesus. Let me be super clear. Friends are important. We all need friends. But listen, if you're at all serious about your faith, you need godly friends. You need godly friends. I don't mean perfect friends because I've been looking around this church for a long time. I ain't found none of them. Y'all are just like so-so. But it's one thing to be perfect, which no one is. It's another to find someone who says, that's the direction I want to go with my life. And that's who you need in your friend circle. Because here's the deal. You got to have people that are going the same direction. I've said it before, I'll say it again. You need friends who know you and know Jesus. We all do. And you need some friends who love you and who also love Jesus. So if you did a friendship audit right now in your world, like think about that. I mean, you got some friends that actually know you, like you've let them pass the invisible fence a little bit, like they know what's really going on with you. They know what your dreams are that maybe you haven't told some people. They know some of your secrets. Do they know you? Do you have some friends that you know? Do you have some friends that love Jesus and their relationship with God kind of inspires you and you them? That's one of the litmus tests that I was hoping you'd maybe run through your life today. This is really important. We've got to be connected. How can we expect to get very far with Jesus if the people that are most influential in our life aren't heading the same direction? 2 Corinthians 6 in the Bible actually says, don't be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. What it's saying there is not just about marriage. It's saying your posse, your closest ride or die gang in life, you need to find that support that's moving in the same direction. Rising sixth graders. You joined us last week, right? Welcome. This is really important for you. As you head into middle school, you got to really think more intelligently now about your friends. Or if you're moving from middle school to high school, or all those high school grads heading off into military, workforce, college, wherever you're doing next year, so many kids, good kids, are swept away by this disconnect. Answering questions like, well, what college am I going to go to? And what car am I going to drive? And what dorm am I going to be in? And what major am I going to have? And the most important factors in your success in your life and as a human being and your GPA for that matter is not what you're going to do with all those things, but who you're going to let into your circle of friends. Way more important in deciding. I've said it before, I'll say this again. Show me your friends, I'll show you your future. Because your friends will, in larger part than any of us want to admit, help determine where and how far you go. It will determine how fast you progress in life and what you fall prey to and how you shape your expectation of success and your vision of the good life and whether you choose one course of action or another when it comes to choosing a mate or your priorities or your ethics or your morals or your values and whether they will feed your pity party and tell you you're justified in acting like a baby or whether you need to grow up. Friends do all that for us. Show me your friends, they'll show you your future. I wonder if we really understand that friends then are the means by which God helps us grow. Did you ever think about that? That's how God wants to help you grow. It's like, I wish I could grow in my faith. It's like, show me your friends. God uses Christian brothers and sisters to protect us, to speak to us, to guide us. They're the conduit of God's grace. So in the Bible, when it talks about all the one another's, pray for one another, build one another up, forgive one another, be kind to one another, all that's just like saying, that's our practice ground to become like Jesus, is one another. I'll give you two examples of really important dimensions in your life as a human being that I think are very hard to achieve without Christian friends, but if you have Christian friends, will absolutely come into your life and make you a better human being. I'll give you one example. Forgiveness. There's probably nothing more central to our life as Christians than saying, I'm a person who recognizes I'm a sinner. I've been forgiven by God. I've received this grace, and it's changed everything about me. And now I want to extend that to other people. And Jesus says the place where you learn that is not a book or a Sunday school class. It's in real relationships with people who understand and forgive one another. And in doing so, we grow and become more like Christ. I'll speak personally with you. I spent way too much of my life trying to be perfect. I thought I had a real shot at it. Almost like there's no reason you need to forgive me. But what I have learned is so much more beautiful to be forgiven than it is to be innocent. Because innocence, first of all, is an illusion where we pretend we're perfect without any need to forgive or be forgiven. But to be forgiven by someone that you have wronged, who cares enough about you in that relationship and who's led by the same Jesus I'm led by to say, that hurt me, please don't do it again, but I forgive you, is the most beautiful. It'll expand you as a human being in a way that pretending to be innocent never will. And that's why around here we want to keep it real. Like, this isn't a church for people who can act like you're perfect or innocent. If you're innocent, hang around a while. You figure out you're not innocent. And you might experience something way better, which is forgiveness, which is, where are you going to experience that? Out in the world somewhere? Good luck. You experience it with people who've been graced by God, who pray prayers like, we follow the one who said, Father, forgive them, and then who taught us to pray, Father, forgive us as we continue to forgive others. It's just one example. You need Christian friends in your life to experience that kind of thing. Let me give you another one. Encouragement. Because discouragement's an epidemic today, y'all. Like, life is hard. Everyone, I got people that are quitting, and every profession, people's discouraged and quit and flaming out and burning out, and it's really hard. Life can be hard right now. But you know what the word encourage means? I always think of it this way. Encourage is like putting courage in someone someone's had the courage beat out of them somehow. And they need to have that courage built up in them again. And we have the gift of doing that for each other. Who do you need to put some courage into? Who is in your life that can put courage back into you? That's an important question. One of the things that I am privileged to do in my role is not just work and be a part of Mountain, but to invest in pastors and other churches all over the country. And one of the things I was doing 2 weeks ago is I was in a room with a group of pastors, prominent pastors, large successful churches by all accounts, externally observed. But one of these I'll call him Doug. If you saw his church, big church, everything's going great, but something happened. And I won't share details except to say some staff that he had trusted kind of complained to him and about him to some other people, and they went to the board, and the board didn't even talk to him, and they just believed it and went all crazy and went after him, and he was so deflated, like the legs were taken off from under him. He could hardly believe it. He was trusted and blindsided, and he just was like, he was ready to quit. And we were sitting in a room with a group of guys that had developed Christian friendships with each other. And we could see the courage had been sucked right out of this guy. He's done. And you know what we did? We didn't just say, we didn't give him those guys are so bad, they were wrong. No, we just spoke life and value into him, one after the other. We went around the room. We put courage back in our brother. He's back in it. He's in the saddle. He's fighting the good fight. And things are working out just fine where he is because he got his wind back in him. Because he has a community where there's a bunch of guys who love him, love Jesus, and know exactly what to do in that moment. Aren't you glad? I am. And he is. And that's an example of how encouragement works. It's how it's meant to work, because we all find ourselves like that guy with the courage kicked out of us sometimes. And we need a community. You need some friends who care enough about you and know enough about Jesus to know exactly what to do in those moments. The devil wanted to take him out. We're like, not today. 1 Thessalonians 5 says, encourage one another and build one another up, just as in fact you're doing. I was talking to another friend at Mountain just last week. He says, I was killing it at work and failing in my marriage for so many years. Talking with him, it had been a long time. His marriage was a struggle. And finally, after years, he surrendered some of his fears and he came out from behind his fence and he found a real men's community with some great content, some accountability. In his own words, he says, I'm finally a man who owns my own stuff, owning up to my own behavior. And there's nothing been easy about it, he said, but after 36 years of marriage and 10 months of discussing divorce with my wife, we finally have peace with one another. And it never would have happened in isolation. And I wonder how many of us are still stuck like he was, in an addiction or a marriage issue or a maturity struggle that we can't seem to get past because we think we're supposed to figure it out on our own. And we're not. There was a young high school kid that was he was a member of a church, but he said, I don't want to go to church anymore. I don't want to go to the youth group. I don't like some of those kids in the student ministry. He was kind of griping about it and telling his grandpa about it. They were out in the backyard, and he was telling his grandpa he wasn't going to do it anymore. And he was going to still kind of be a Christian and everything. He just wasn't going to go to be with those dumb people. And they were standing by the fire. And, the fire was one of those fires that had burned down where it had a big pile of those red-hot embers and coals, you know what I mean? They were just glowing like that. Not quite fully on fire, but red-hot. And without saying a word, as the grandfather listened to his son say how he was done with everything, he just took a stick down there in the fire and he just pulled one of the embers and poked it out to the side of the fire. And as soon as he did, that lone ember turned from red to white, and it began to smoke and smolder. Separated from the others, it became lifeless and cold. And after a bit, the grandfather just took the stick and pushed it back into the pile. And soon it was red hot again and burning like the rest. His point was made, not only to his grandson, but maybe to some of us. Because maybe some of us are not as white hot, or not as red hot in our faith as we could be, because we've been separated from the pile a little too long. I know when my heart has grown cold, one of the things that fires me up as fast as anything is being around someone else who's red hot as well. That's how it works. It's meant to work that way. So around here, you've heard us say a million times, if you've been around at all, get in a group, get in a group. That's not a promotion for the church. That's to help you figure out how to live the way you were meant to live in relationships that are real. Serve with a team. Make some friends. All the people I know that are grounded the best are the people who have that going in their life. So hold on. Okay? Hey, before we go, I got to tell you one more thing. Because we talked about hold on. But we didn't talk about reach out. So let me just tell you what that is. It's the reminder that God's heart aches for anyone whose heart is far from him. So if you're going to care about people, it's not just about all of my church friends. It's got to be that we share this kind of like way of relating with those who are far from God. Like the story in the Bible is the shepherd who had 99 sheep, but one gets away and he goes after the one. Who's your one? Like who's someone that you're not just holding on to because they're of like precious faith, but they're close to you, but far from God. Because God intends to use you and your friendship in who knows what kind of way, but only if you play along. So I encourage you to think about who you might reach out to. And I know when we talk about reach out, sometimes it gets kind of icky and weird in a hurry. People start thinking about banging people over the head with a Bible and all this. But honestly, all it is just learning to be a blessing. And around here, we use that word bless to remind us, B-L-E-S-S. You want to just be a blessing to someone, B-L-E-S-S. Begin with prayer. You know someone that you could pray for because they don't know God yet. Just pray for them. Could you pray for them? Of course you could. L just means listen, like listen to what's going on in their life. Hang out with them, express interest. E means eat with them. Doesn't have to be fancy meal or a flawless meal or a faith-based meal. Just eat food. Some of you are like, wait a second, I can follow Jesus by eating? It's like, yes. You can. It was Jesus' method. And S means serve, like find some way to meet a need and just show up. Bring them food, say hello, watch their dog, Share your story is the final S. When they ask, what's up with you? Here's the way I am. Here's why I am the way I am. If I could highlight one of those, I would say this summer, find a way to practice radical hospitality by sharing food or a meal with someone. It was the basic strategy that Jesus used. We have all these strategies at Mountain. People are like, I know, we're going to invite people to church. That's great. I hope you do. Hope you invite them. Hope you bring them. Hope you do. But the best thing you might ever do to help reach someone is invite them to your kitchen table. Meet them at Chick-fil-A. Share bread with them. Stop asking me to do what God's asking you to do, which is break bread with people. Reach out by the most radical, simple way of Jesus. Let's not get lost in all the cool drums and the screens and the lights and all this stuff that goes on at Mountain and all the amazing programs that we can invite. You know what? The simple way of Jesus was he sat down over a table with somebody and he got to know him and he listened to him and he was a friend. That's how you reach out. And it turns out that's where our relationships and lives start looking more like Jesus. He got in trouble for it. You might get in trouble for it. I don't know. Take it up with someone else, not me. Just go eat some meals. God uses little things to do big things all through the Bible. You got Moses got a stick and he did big stuff with it. And let's see, what'd you have? David, he had that little slingshot. He did a big thing with it. Well, you got a table and you got $12 in your pocket. You can meet someone for coffee. So you can do something big with something little. What if you opened your heart and your home, your table and your time, to somebody so you could reach out. That's it. We're done. But I hope you don't leave here without doing an audit of your life and thinking about how important it is that we love people and how you really can't do that if you're not holding on. Who's your ride or die? What do you need to do to get in a group or make that happen? And who you're reaching out to. Who's close to you, but far from God. And maybe you could do it around a table. Fair enough? God, help us to pick out the part of today that was for us. And not to evaluate a sermon, but to evaluate ourselves. And to be thinking, what's the thing for me to do to follow Jesus today? And if we could all take one step, we know it would be a win in your eyes and ours. And so we ask for your help in doing that as we hold on and reach out for your sake and our benefit and blessing. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.